Hi, this is Victor Neustroev, and in this video I would like to share how I won against a Grandmaster. I'm not proud of this game because I made many mistakes and I got almost a losing position, but for some reason my opponent, a Grandmaster, blundered a rook and lost the game immediately. Can you imagine it? And he wasn't in time trouble. It was me who had just 5 minutes left on the clock. Okay, in this game I was playing with black pieces against a Grandmaster with a rating 2501. His name is Joshua Daniel Ruiz Castillo from Colombia. You can see his picture, and I actually knew that he plays e4. I also expected him to play knight f3 as well as the first move, but he decided to play e4 first, and I was playing a Sicilian c5, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes on d4, knight d4, a6. And in this position there are several moves that are really good. However, he chose knight d2, which is a dubious move. Actually, I analyzed some of his games, and at that moment I knew that he could play knight to d2. However, I didn't take this move seriously. I decided that knight d2 is a bad move and I can do anything I want, like queen c7, d6, and then apply a hedgehog strategy. I made a few moves with the help of the computer when I was preparing to this game, and then decided not to analyze this variation anymore because I wasn't sure that knight d2 gonna be played. So d6 is a good move in this position. However, queen c7 is a playable move too. If, for example, here d6, bishop d3, knight f6. Castle bishop e7, and this is how black tries to build a hedgehog strategy without playing queen c7. So this is how white shows that he doesn't need to spend the tempo on queen c7. It can be a useless move. Maybe this what should I play? But I played queen c7. Not only me, but a few grandmasters also played this move in this position. Bishop d3, knight f6. Castle d6 now. a4. His idea is to play a5 to prevent me from playing b5. Also to get the control over the b6 square, and this is what he successfully achieved. That was my mistake to allow him to get it. For example, here I played knight b to d7, and then I didn't really like this move at all. I think bishop e7 is a more flexible move. If, for example, then a5, then I can play e5. And if now knight goes to a5, I can just take it with my bishop. And in this position, knight c6, I'm not threatening to take the pawn on a5 immediately, but you see the pawn from e4 moved to f5. That's why white lost the control over the center. His only advantage is his development. I'm not castled yet, but at the same time his dark square bishop is not developed. I would say this position is approximately equal. He has a bishop pair, I have a pawn center, and the pawn on e5 is a potential weakness. So this is another important factor. That's why after e5 he has to play something like this, knight a2, and then d5. Usually it's a bad idea to open the position when you are not developed. But in this position, these two knights are not located ideally, so he has to spend a few tempos to improve them. For example, knight c4, bishop e6, and I am okay. On the next move I can castle or play knight to c6. If only I make these moves and he, for example, doesn't do anything, I could be better. Anyway, at least the position is equal. I control the b6 square. I don't need to think about my light squared bishop. It's okay to locate it on e6. I play knight to d7, a5, and now I can't play e5. Why? Because then knight goes to f5, for example, then to e3. So this is how I weaken these two squares simultaneously. I have no time to play d5. However, he played a5, and then I played bishop e7, knight c4. If I'm not mistaken, I analyzed this position with computer before I started the game, and then I just quickly looked at this position and decided that after d5 I'm okay. But it's not true. In this position it would be better to play castle, rook e1, then h6, and something like this, bishop d7. If he wants, he could take. But generally I'm okay here. I can also capture his bishop on d3. But I just decided that d5 and black has no problems, but it wasn't true. So I was trying to prepare against this opponent before the game, but unfortunately didn't pay much attention to this variation and didn't get deeper into details. That was my mistake. So I played d5, e takes d5, knight takes on d5. To take with the pawn is not a good idea, because then this pawn is an isolated pawn. He played queen g4. That's a strange move. He could play c3, rook e1, anything. But he played queen g4. And actually, I understand why he decided to play this move. He wants to sacrifice on e6. For example, if here I castle, then knight e6. Here f takes on e6, then he captures on d5. And in this position I played h5. This move was so obvious for me, and it didn't take much time to decide to play it. Why? Because queen g7 is a mistake here, of course. Bishop f6, and his knight is hanging on d4. What can he do? Just to play knight e6. This is his only chance after queen g7. Then bishop g7, knight c7. Knight takes knight, then maybe rook e1 check, king f8, bishop f4, knight e6, bishop d6, king g8. According to the computer, there is a compensation for the sacrificed piece, but I believe any strong player prefers to play this position for black with extra piece. Because after black finishes his piece's development, his position can become winning. And I'm not sure that white can do anything to stop it. Maybe only by playing the only moves like computer usually plays. Okay. So queen g7 didn't work. That's why here he played queen e2. Knight c5. Rook e1, bishop f6, taking on d4. Here I did everything well, and now the position is equal. Knight f5, using this pin. And this is where I made a mistake. Here I decided to castle. I made this move very fast, because I was expecting him to play knight f5, and then after castle the knight is hanging. I was thinking it's okay. However, in this position, I don't really need to castle at all. My rook on h8 supports the pawn on h5. Also, I can play h4. This position I can play king f8, for example, to get rid of the pin, or just bishop d7 and let him give a check on d6. After that I can play king f8. For example, knight e4, knight takes knight, queen takes on a4, bishop b5. If he goes to b6, bishop b5 is not obligatory move, but just an example what can happen in case of king f8. Knight b6, I capture on d3, then on b6, bishop f4 is intermediate move, I have to move my queen, and then I take on b6, so this is how I have to lose a temper. Rook c1, here I can do anything. Take on b2, play king g8, but h4 looks to be more solid, with the idea to develop the rook to h5. I can lose a pawn on b7 after rook c7, but I can also capture on b2. So this position is equal. Actually, in this position I didn't analyze any other moves except castle king side. That was my mistake. Castle, knight d6, knight takes on d3, that was correct. g6, because the pawn here on h5 was hanging. g6, bishop h6. How would you play in this position if you were black? What do you think is the best move? I didn't make this move. I played quite a bad move, after which my position is not so good, and it's white who has the advantage. However, here I could equalize. The idea is to sacrifice the exchange. The idea is to sacrifice the exchange and play bishop d7. Bishop f8, rook f8. Knight e4, bishop g7. Queen f3, for example, rook d8. Here, two bishops can compensate the material sacrifice. I don't trade the queens because I'm not sure that I have a compensation in the end game. But for me, at that moment, it wasn't obvious that I can sacrifice the exchange on f8. I wasn't thinking about this option at all. I played rook d8 almost automatically. Knight e4. Because of the weaknesses of dark squares, I have to keep my dark squared bishop on the board, so it's a better idea to trade for the knight. And again, how would you play in this position? Here I analyzed two options, but for some reason choose a bad one. I chose bishop h8. I thought that I'm okay on h8, and if I go to d4 with my bishop, it can become the object of the attack. But actually bishop d4 is the move that can help me to keep playing this position. Rook c1, queen e7, bishop g5, f6. Bishop a3, I take and play e5, then bishop e6, and it's equal. However, after bishop h8, my bishop is not playing. Bishop g5, f6, bishop a3, I take, then e5, and you see it's totally blocked. That's a bad bishop, and I have no time to develop the other one. Knight b6, rook b8. In this position, I expected him to play knight d5 move, then if I take the queen a7, I'm down the exchange, and in this position there is no compensation because of this bad bishop, of course, and the bishop on c8, which is hanging in such a case. However, after knight d5, just queen f8 works. And there is nothing better than playing knight to b6 back. Then bishop f5, and I'm okay. He didn't play knight d5. In this position he played d4, which is a good move too. Of course, here I could play bishop e6, and I believe this is what my opponent expected me to play. But at that moment I was already in time trouble and decided to choose this move. The idea is to attack on a5, d4, b2, and even a rook on e1 in some of the variations. If we go back here, bishop e6 is of course a good move, but it gives white with a clear advantage. For example, here d takes e5, takes e5, knight g5, bishop f6, he takes, rook c7, bishop g7. Here white is slightly better, and actually this is a good position for black to achieve. But instead of taking on e5, knight c5 is a strong move, and this is what I didn't like, and that's why I didn't play bishop e6. How to play here? If this move, then just d5, rook d6, and then the rook becomes the object of the attack, and he continues pushing his d-pawn. If instead bishop f7, f4, e4, f5, and I can't take because knight d7 and queen g3, he wins the exchange. But maybe I better play this position instead of playing queen b4. D takes e5, and again in this position f takes on e5 was a good move. Then for example knight d5, rook takes d5, queen a7, and it's clear that white is winning. That's why I didn't take on e5. I played queen b2, but actually that's a losing position too. E takes on f6, bishop takes on f6. And in this position I expected many moves. For example, rook c7, then I can play bishop g7, I'm okay. Queen h6, then bishop f5, knight f6, queen f6, rook c7, then I just play rook e8, because my queen protects my king from a checkmate. He checks on h7, king f8, but nothing more. However, even if he plays with his rook to f1, for example, he keeps the pressure, and I believe his position is better. He played knight c4. It's a possible move too. Queen d4. After queen d4, he has several options. And almost all of them could lead to a winning position. So, for example, queen g3 is a possible move. Then bishop f5, and in this position knight c2 d6. What to do? Bishop e5. The idea of this move is to make this square available for the queen. So bishop e5, queen b3 check, and then he takes on a5, totally ruins my pawn structure, makes my king weak. He can also join the rook to c7 to help the queen to checkmate. Another move is queen h6, but after queen h6 I think I'm okay. Bishop f5 just. Knight f6, queen f6. Here, of course, white is much better, but black can continue playing. Rook cd1, the move that I analyzed and didn't like. How to play then? If queen e3, knight f6 check, king f7, knight takes a3, I'm down a piece and my rook on d8 is hanging, that's why I have to trade, and then to capture on f6. But then rook d8, king f7, rook g8, king f7, rook h8, and it's difficult now to get rid of this pin. I'm sure this position is winning for white. And I think this is what my opponent decided to do in the game. He wanted to get this position, but he made a mistake. Here I have to take the queen, because if I take his rook, I can be checkmated. Knight f6. King g7 or f7, doesn't matter. Queen e7 anyway. King h8, queen h7 is a checkmate. If he goes to h6, queen h7 anyway. King g5, knight a4. And then I have several options, but in all these lines, white can find a checkmate. For example, king g4, h3. King f4, g3. King f3, knight a5. If in this position king f5, then just queen f7. If instead of king g4, king f4, then g3, king f5, queen f7, king g4, knight a3, and finally knight g5. If here king to h4, then just queen a7, queen g5. That's why after rook cd1 I have to take on e3 and pass the game into this endgame where he pins my bishop and rook on the back rank. But here Grandmaster decided to play rook d1, but it looks like there was no difference for him which rook to play, and he played with this rook. That was a critical blunder, and after I take on d1, his king is under check and he has no way to save his position. The only move here is queen e1, but after that I trade the queens and just win with extra rook. So you see, rook cd1 wins the game, rook ed1 loses the game. Looks like my opponent just didn't analyze that I can capture on d1, and this is a checkmate. Okay, I was lucky to win this game, but you see, even a Grandmaster can blunder a rook. I don't know why. Maybe he was focused on my time, because I had only 5 minutes left on my clock, while I had to play 11 more moves to pass the control and get additional 15 minutes. Okay, thank you for your attention. Don't blunder rooks. I recommend it to everyone. Also, I'm going to record more games analysis from my recent tournaments very soon. Thank you for your attention.